Hello, everyone, and welcome to Local Solutions Statewide Impact, a podcast brought to you by the Ohio Mayors Alliance. We are honored to have Mayors Andrew Ginther of Columbus and Christina Muryn of Findlay with us today. Mayors, welcome to you both. Let's begin with a headline from Site Selection magazine from just a few weeks ago. 8 means great for Findlay, Ohio. Translation, Findlay is again what's called the #1 micropolitan area in the entire country. Okay, Mayor Muryn, take your victory lap here. That's the beauty of a podcast. This is not, a 15-second soundbite on the local TV news. How does Findlay keep outpacing the entire country?
Well, thanks, Scott. It really has to do with collaboration. We have worked tirelessly to create this concept of the Findlay formula. And it's really about business, government, and education working together to solve the problems that face our community. And by doing that, we're able to really support our local businesses that are here to continue to expand. And we really have seen a lot of our growth and the qualifying projects for the Site Selection Magazine Award be from expansion of our existing businesses. Many times economic development folks get so focused on new attraction, which is extremely important. And we're always very excited about that as well. And we did have some of that as well from names like Amazon coming to our community. But it's really about focusing on our core competencies and creating an environment for our businesses to thrive. And then that attracts other businesses as well.
Mayor Ginther, to you, Columbus's red-hot economic streak continues as well. You and your team, you were certainly at the table and luring what is being called the largest private sector investment ever coming to Ohio in Intel. How'd this happen?
I think it's a great example of when the public and the private sectors are working together. We coin it the Columbus way because we really do feel that we do public-private partnerships very well here in Central Ohio. And this is another great partnership with working in concert with the Governor, Jobs Ohio, our local regional economic development group, One Columbus, formerly 2020, all working together to help secure one of the most transformational projects in our state's history. Obviously, the governor, lieutenant governor, Jobs Ohio offered up a significant amount of incentives. New Albany had the land, but they couldn't do it without water and sewer from the city of Columbus. And we believe that the best communities around the country and the world are those that are leading regionally, meaning that all of them working together for the betterment of the region. And so we know that on top of the thousands of jobs that will be created for Intel, I am told that there'll be 10 jobs created for every one Intel job amongst suppliers and vendors throughout the region, not to mention the 7,000 construction-related jobs that won't necessarily be permanent, but significant and great opportunities for workers in Central Ohio. We're really excited about the future here. And I believe that this, in addition to Hyperion, the Rumpke expansion, great examples of the Columbus comeback, and another example of why metro economies, our cities, are so important to the state's economy.
When I go back to that Site Survey magazine piece, Ohio was #1 in the country with 17 of the best micro economies out there and more than 100 projects going in those 17 cities across the state. Can both of you expand again on that regional cooperation that's taking place throughout every corner of our state?
We really do play off of each other. We've really seen it in Northwest Ohio that we look at things regionally, and sometimes it's may just be minor things. As businesses in Findlay grow, they may need additional warehousing space that they can't locate in Findlay, or maybe on a route through Tiffin or Fostoria. And so we have that kind of regional impact, that ripple effect that happens. But as Mayor Ginther was saying, people want to be in the cities where there are amenities and resources and that community. So things like good parks or trails or performing arts, that quality of life, when people are looking at where they want to locate, places within our regions. And, Findlay is great because we have the rural land access where you can have that property, but still have the amenities of a city. And I think what people are looking at for quality of life, you find in cities. And so when businesses are looking to locate in Ohio, they look to the cities first, and then they're able to kind of grow from there and have that ripple effect. So I think that that's really what we're seeing in Ohio, in our micropolitans, and certainly in our metropolitan areas, is that Ohio has a very diverse localities that you can invest in. So once they've nailed down that, hey, we want to be in Ohio, then they can really find the city that suits their needs best. So I love that we have a little bit of variety and friendly competition among our communities, but really great cities that play to our strengths.
I think Mayor Muryn hit it right there. I mean, I'm honored to serve as the chair of the Metro Economies Council for the U.S. Conference of Mayors. And so as we look at this, both for cities from a national perspective, but even more here at the state level, there are a couple of key statistics I think are really important for people to keep in mind. So in 2021, Ohio's metro economies were home to 84% of the state's jobs. 84% in Ohio's metro economies in 2021. They also generated over 90% of Ohio's wage income, as well as 87% of the gross state product. There is no Ohio economy without our cities and our metro economies. And we're driving the Ohio comeback that we're seeing in some of the great efforts in Northwest Ohio, Central Ohio, Southwest, Northeast, and Southeastern Ohio are really because of the health and prosperity of our cities. And as Mayor Muryn said, folks are looking for great talent. So places where there are universities and other great corporate and high tech and great entrepreneur partners in parts of the state, but they're also looking, where are we going to be able to attract and retain the best talent, not just from around the state, the country, and the world. And it's got to be places that are welcoming, that are diverse, and places where people want to live, with good schools, great parks, great opportunities to enjoy cultural arts and other amenities, whether it's in our downtowns or our suburban areas.
Let me ask one other follow-up about Intel in this sense. It's been reported that our Ohio team, our collective team, whether it's folks like you, the mayors, the DeWine administration, Jobs Ohio, everyone, that team had to make up ground in the beginning because we really weren't on Intel's radar. Can both of you kind of lift the curtain a little bit and take us back, and how were we able to make up that ground?
I think part of it comes down to getting over our Midwestern modesty, and talking a little bit more about all the great assets and telling our story. Oftentimes there are a lot of people around the country, especially from the coast, that view Ohio, for whatever reason, still as the flyover country. And when we explain to them the great dynamic cities and thriving economy of this state, particularly in Central Ohio and in other places of the state as well, they better understand all of the great assets that we have here. Clearly, the most compelling one is our people, the talent, our universities, our K through 12 systems, but also the great businesses that are here, and our commitment and cooperation and the collaborative spirit that we bring to our biggest challenges in each of our communities. Obviously, making sure that we're creating a pipeline that will help them continue to grow and thrive in Central Ohio was an important piece to it. And making sure that we were competitive with respect to services was another important case for us to make.
We are making strides to change the misnomer that Ohio is, only farmland or flyover country or this Rust Belt. And that's not what Ohio is at all. And we've made great progress on that, but there's still a lot of work to do about what are the benefits of living in the Midwest, whether it be a strong workforce, strong education, low cost of living, great access. We have a great story to tell. And I think that we're getting better at telling it. But I think that when we have these international companies that are looking to come to the United States, it's very easy for them to immediately focus on those big cities, the names that they've heard in movies or that they've talked about for, financial investment for decades. But we have a lot to offer. And I think we just need to get a little bit better at getting that message outside of our state, outside of the US, but really making a name for ourselves internationally as well.
I think there's this great opportunity right now too, and Mayor Muryn and I have talked to our president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, Mayor Francis Suarez, about this as well. There's this incredible opportunity, I think, that is continuing to present itself for a reshoring in America and in America's cities. When you think of Intel in particular, we've learned a lot over the last couple of years, and the fact that I think 80 or 90% of chips in the world were being all produced in China. That puts us and the rest of the world, not just from a supply chain situation, but some would argue cybersecurity and national security at a disadvantage. And China doesn't necessarily have our best interests at heart, and certainly our our economic and national security interests at heart. And so I think there's going to be continuing to be a great opportunity for a reshoring into America's cities that are committed to innovation, technology, research, and development, the likes of which maybe we haven't seen over the last 20, 30, 40 years. It's pretty exciting.
I'm glad both of you mentioned the word that is storytelling, and that, an axiom that I think will stand the test of time, whether you go back 100 years to when a newspaper was 5 cents, or you come to present day and we have 5-second TikTok videos. If you're not telling your own story, somebody else will. And you have to be out front that way. You just do. And that was another thing we learned in COVID, right? Even if you're doing it on Zoom, tell your story. One way or another, get your story out there. Let me come to both of you with this. The Ohio mayors and lawmakers recently got together. There was a luncheon. It's back at the end of March. And you talked about several things, including the fiscal stability of cities when it comes to remote working. A couple of things here. Fewer commuters equals less municipal income tax revenue. Municipal income tax revenue equals the primary income source for cities. How was this explained to lawmakers, and also how was it received?
At our lunch, we really wanted to convey the message that we all want Ohio to be strong and competitive and economically diverse and growing. And anytime we are looking at the financial stability of our cities and our state, the mayors need to be at the table to make sure that any policy changes that are discussed are framed in a manner that will play out as intended. Because I think many times we have good intentions to, for example, try to make the state more competitive. That doesn't always play out as desired. And so I think the big things, I'm responsible for the city of Findlay. That is my core responsibility. But as we said earlier, I want Northwest Ohio, the state of Ohio, to succeed. And so as we're talking about any potential changes or the impacts of work from home on our cities, it definitely has a huge impact on the city of Findlay and many other cities across the state of Ohio. And so we just need to make sure that we work together to talk through solutions and don't make any kind of knee-jerk reactions to some of the financial situations or headlines that we hear coming across the state or across the country. Cities have been fortunate to receive support from the federal government. It's now our responsibility to put those dollars to work to make sure that the economic recovery that it was intended to create happens. We're not sitting here fat and happy by any means. And so I think it's, again, telling that story of the role that cities play, the reality of the financial situation we're in, and how we can all move forward together for the betterment of our state. And I think that was received well. I think, it's been a quick turnaround, so I don't think we've had many conversations since then. But I think anytime that we open a conversation with, we're on this, we want to work together, and we recognize we may not agree on everything, but we need to have the conversation. is always going to be much more productive than it becoming a boxing match. And that's not what any of us want to see happen.
It is pretty unique. Ohio and mayors in Ohio face a very unique challenge in this respect. Only about 1% of cities are funded through income tax in America. And as you all know, income tax in Ohio is paid where you work, not where you live. And so remote work has changed a great deal about many things in our life, and certainly income tax. One other thing that's happened over the last 20 years is Ohio cities have become much more reliant on income tax because of tax policy changes at the state level. The elimination of the estate tax, cutting the local government fund in half, the rolling out of the personal property tangible tax in favor of the cat tax faster. So when I joined city council back in 2007, I believe about 63% of our general fund came from income tax revenue. It's now about 80%. And so at the same time that remote work will make income tax revenue based on the current system more unpredictable, cities have become even more reliant on that income tax revenue. And so to Mayor Muryn's point, what we're committed to and what we want to work with our partners at the state on is let's look at the data, let's look at the facts. We're grateful for the CARES Act that was signed into law by former President Trump and the rescue plan dollars signed into law by President Biden to help us during the worst of this pandemic. But those are short-term, one-time dollars. That is not going to help us address this long-term imbalance with respect to revenue and the uncertainty of remote work. We have to figure that out together, but it has to be based on good data and wanting to protect the quality of life in our cities, because as I mentioned before, 87% of the gross state product, 90% of Ohio's wage income, 84% of the state's jobs are in our metro economies. So if those cities do not have consistent, predictable revenue, Ohio's economy is in grave danger. We want to do our part. We want to continue to create jobs and lead Ohio's recovery. But we need to work together, informed by good data, good information, and partnership to figure this out together to protect basic city services like police and fire and public health and recreation and parks in our cities. So they're places that talented people want to live and where successful companies want to come.
And to follow up on that, Mayor Ginther, that's where the majority of these dollars go, right? It goes to police, fire, and EMS.
Overwhelmingly, and Mayor Muryn, I'm sure it's the same is true in Findlay. Of our general fund budget, about 85% of it is people, and an overwhelming majority of that is our first responders. Police and fire make up well over 60% of our general fund budget. In addition to public health in the midst of a global pandemic, we're not out of that yet, and all the other critically important city services. But Mayor, I'm sure the same is true in Findlay.
Yeah, 77% of our general fund budget on average is our personnel, and over 60% of that is police and fire. So we're in a very similar boat.
Let's get into the weeds a little bit more. I want to throw a couple more data points your way. I looked at a report from the Ohio Mayors Alliance that estimated a couple of things here. 33% of the workforce could work from home based on economic data that looked at a cross-section of about 10 Ohio cities. The resulting fiscal impacts vary, but the range was between a loss of 6 and 17% of municipal income tax revenue within a city's general fund. And then there was, let's maybe put an asterisk here. The report is believed to be conservative in its estimates as well, as it only looked at revenue paid by residents and non-residents. It didn't get into, decreasing goods and services and things like that. What are some of the other data points that you're going to be watching over the coming months, say 6, 12, 18 months out?
I think there's a couple of key points that we want to look at. First of all, we are not naive to think that there are not winners in this situation either. And as we're talking across the Ohio Mayors Alliance, There are some members in our group that will potentially benefit from this. So again, I guess I want to reiterate my point that we're willing to have the conversation on how we make adjustments that are fair to the employees and businesses to help kind of overall lower the tax burden, but also making sure that we are not taking any steps that are to the detriment of our cities, especially reacting to just the current situation. But I would completely agree. When we're looking at taxation, the city of Findlay has been fortunate that we're heavily manufacturing based. And so we definitely did not see the work from home shift that many other larger municipalities saw that were much more white collar office heavy. But we are seeing that shift. I think that we're also going to see a long-term shift where we're going to have some of that come back. But it has a huge ripple effect, as we've seen to all of our businesses. When people aren't working downtown, they're not shopping at the restaurants, they're not paying for parking at the parking garages, they're not going out for drinks afterwards. So it has a huge ripple effect. I think overall, we can make adjustments long term to better insulate from that. And we recognize that it's going to take a couple of steps to get there. But it definitely has huge impacts on especially our larger metro areas.
This is why data, information, and good faith are so important. We have not seen the severity of the fall off in income tax revenue that we were anticipating, but we're not sure exactly why yet. There are a lot of companies the onus is put on the employer currently to figure out where a worker's days are being spent, and some companies are not as far along as others. So that is something that we're going to have to continue to work on. About 51% of the income tax revenue in Central Ohio and Columbus is funded by about 10 or 12 of our largest employers. And so as folks come back to the office, and remote work, I think is, and certainly a hybrid, I think is here to stay. And so how do we figure out these longer term implications for companies, for workers, for employees, and obviously cities throughout the state as well? And just a critically important reminder, those CARES Act dollars cannot be used for revenue replacement and had to be spent on COVID related issues when those dollars came. And the ARPA resources can be used for revenue replacement, but for all intents and purposes, it's one-time money that doesn't deal with this longer term structural challenge that we're talking about and change to our economy. And so we want to work good faith, put all the cards on the table there, share as good information as we have with our state leaders to try to figure out a path forward. We know they understand how critically important Ohio cities are to Ohio's economy. And all of us are serving the same folks. And so we need to work together to figure out how we can provide basic city services, grow Ohio's economy, and do so in a thoughtful and responsible way. And that's what we're committed to do.
And one thing I'd like to add, I talk about the city of Findlay has been fortunate throughout the pandemic that we haven't seen a large, work from home population. But I think it's also important to note that we have a population in the city of Findlay about 42,000. In the county, it's about 75,000. On a daily basis, we have about 30,000 individuals that come into the county to work and about 10 to 13,000 that leave the county to work. The state of Ohio, one of its benefits is that I would say we have a lot of people moving around the state on a daily basis. We're very integrated. I joke with people all the time. They say, "Oh, I don't want to live in Findlay. You guys are a 45-minute drive from anything." And I said, "Yeah, I'm a 45-minute drive to a completely different part of the state. You're a 45-minute drive, 10 minutes. Or 10 miles across to go to the grocery store." So it's all, perception. But I think that's important that when we look, this is not a big city problem. This impacts all of our communities. And we are very reliant upon each other's success.
Half the people that work in the city of Columbus live outside the city. And so you spend any time in Central Ohio, the entire community and region will only thrive if the city is thriving and growing. Similar for Findlay and Northwest Ohio. There isn't the rest of the region can't thrive and succeed if the largest city in that part of the state isn't. And so it really isn't just about basic city services in Columbus, although it is. It's really about the quality of life in New Albany and Dublin and Grove City and in Powell and Westerville that we're talking about here. And so that's one of the things I think we need to continue to share, that message that, again, great communities that are leading nationally and internationally are doing so regionally. And these types of issues don't just impact big cities or small towns, but entire regions.
Let's button up our conversation this way. I was talking about the beauty of a podcast in that, you can get into data. You can get into the weeds a little bit on issues like this. Let's button it up this way. Both of you literally have a microphone in front of you. What is your direct message to state lawmakers and to your constituents about these fiscal challenges and how we can bring people to the table and solve them together?
My message to state lawmakers and the citizens of Findlay and the state of Ohio is that we're still in this together, and that our brightest days are ahead, that we can continue to be competitive, wonderful communities in the heart of the United States. And I'm excited to be able to work with our state lawmakers to figure out how we create a financially stable and thriving path forward for our state in our taxation to be lower cost, to be more competitive with other states, but also continue to be a great place for our citizens to live, learn, work, play, and pray.
The only thing I would add is we're ready to roll. I mean, Ohio cities are raising our hands, want to do our part, continue to grow the economy, create jobs, work with our partners at the state and federal and in the private sector. We believe the future of Ohio and Ohio cities is very, very bright if we remain committed to sharing good data, good information, work together in a bipartisan way to put our economy and our communities first. And we're committed to do that because we believe in the health and the prosperity of the diverse group of cities throughout our state. And we are eager to continue to lead the way with innovation, with research and development, job creation, but we have to do it in partnership.
One thing I would add is that good policy is difficult to create. And so we all want to work together to create it, to make sure that we have the right path forward.
That is an excellent way to wrap up this whole thing. Mayor Andrew Ginther and Mayor Christina Muryn, thank you, and thanks to our listeners as well. Don't forget, head to our website, ohiomayorsalliance.org, to learn more about us. We're a diverse group of bipartisan mayors from Ohio's 30 largest cities. Sign up for our newsletter, plus find out how Ohio mayors get the job done every day. You just heard Mayor Ginther say it. We are ready to roll, and Ohio mayors live out the very title of this podcast series, Local Solutions, Statewide Impact. Take care, everyone.